Hollywood's golden age glittered with diamonds, gowns, and dreams. But behind the satin and the spotlight lurked tempers, rivalries, and egos as grand as the marquees themselves. Some actresses were adored for their beauty, others for their talent, yet many became equally famous for their difficult ways. Tales of tantrums on set, razor-sharp tongues, and demands that could stall entire productions were whispered from studio lots to society columns. Today, we turn back the clock to uncover the 15 most bratty actresses of old Hollywood, women who dazzled the screen while raising more than a few eyebrows behind it. And what better place to begin than with the sharp-tongued empress of attitude herself, Bette Davis. Number 1. Bette Davis. If there was ever a woman who could turn a raised eyebrow into a weapon, it was Bette Davis. Known for those piercing eyes and a voice that could slice through silk, Davis wasn't simply an actress. She was a force of nature. From the moment she stormed into Warner Brothers in the 1930s, she refused to be treated as anything less than royalty. "Until you're known in my profession as a monster," she once quipped, "you're not a star." And Bette lived up to her own definition. Her career was lined with triumphs, 2 Academy Awards, unforgettable turns in Jezebel and All About Eve, and a reputation as one of the greatest actresses Hollywood ever produced. But off-screen, directors, producers, even co-stars dreaded her temper. Davis was infamous for fighting studio bosses, tossing scripts she found beneath her, and sparring with fellow actresses who dared to challenge her. Her rivalry with Joan Crawford would later become legend. But even before that, Bette's sharp tongue could cut an ego to ribbons. She was also known for her on-set theatrics. If she disliked a line, she wouldn't whisper her disapproval. She'd bellow it across the stage until changes were made. Assistants recalled that if Bette's coffee was too cold, the entire crew would know it. Yet for all the tantrums, she had a remarkable gift. Audiences adored her for the very qualities that made others fear her. And perhaps that is the secret to Bette Davis. The same stubborn fire that called clashes off camera gave her performances their extraordinary bite. She could play vulnerable, she could play vicious, but she was always unforgettable. Of course, Bette wasn't the only actress whose personality burned brighter than the spotlight. If Davis was the queen of acid wit, then our next star was its wild, untamed princess.
Miss Bankhead is bored. Miss Bankhead will let you know.
Number 2. Tallulah Bankhead. If Bette Davis wielded wit like a dagger, Tallulah Bankhead tossed it like confetti. The Alabama-born actress was a whirlwind of laughter, scandal, and unfiltered mischief. Known for her deep, husky voice and theatrical flair, Tallulah dazzled audiences on both stage and screen, but her offstage antics often made bigger headlines than her performances. Bankhead was a socialite with no breaks. She smoked like a chimney, drank like a sailor, and swore with a flair that left even seasoned newspapermen blushing. Reporters adored her because she never held her tongue. Once, when asked why she never married, she famously replied, "My father warned me about men and liquor, but he never warned me about women and cocaine." It was the kind of line only Tallulah could deliver. Outrageous, shocking, and completely unapologetic. On film sets, she was notorious for showing up late, sometimes not at all, and her wild lifestyle kept studio heads wringing their hands. Yet when the cameras rolled, she could command a screen with a magnetism that was impossible to deny. Her performances in films like Lifeboat revealed both her talent and her tempestuous spirit. Friends and rivals alike said she lived as though the rules of Hollywood simply didn't apply to her. And maybe they didn't. Tallulah wasn't just a brat. She was a spectacle, a walking headline who relished every gasp she inspired. Still, for all her flamboyance, there was always an edge of danger with Bankhead. You never knew whether you'd get a dazzling story or a scandalous disaster. And if Tallulah loved chaos, then our next actress practically bottled it. A fiery storm whose temper was so legendary, it earned her the nickname the Mexican Spitfire. Number 3. Lupe Velez. If Hollywood had a powder keg and high heels, it was Lupe Velez. Known to the world as the Mexican Spitfire, Lupe was every bit as explosive off-screen as she was on it. Petite, stunning, and blessed with a volcanic timbre, Velez carved out a career in the 1920s and 30s that was equal parts talent and chaos. On screen, she was electric. Her comedic timing in the Mexican Spitfire film series made her a fan favorite, and her exotic beauty set her apart in an industry often accused of sameness. But away from the cameras, Lupe was notorious for her tantrums, passionate romances, and scenes that sometimes upstaged the films. She could turn a dinner party into a battlefield with a single insult, and she once chased his cheating lover down the street, throwing crockery as she went. Her stormy relationship with actor Gary Cooper became the stuff of legend. Their romance was fiery, their breakups even fiercer. Friends said the couple loved as passionately as they fought, leaving broken glass and broken hearts in their wake. Velez herself was unapologetic, never shrinking to fit the polite image the studios wanted. She lived loudly, defiantly, and on her own terms. But her fiery nature came with a price. The Hollywood press adored her scandals, often more than her films. Lupe, however, leaned into the chaos, once declaring, "I am not a lady. I am Lupe Velez." And truly, she was unlike anyone else. Her life ended tragically, but her legend as a Hollywood tempestuous Spitfire still smolders in the pages of film history. And if Lupe's passion burned hot, our next actress cloaked her fire in diamonds, furs, and steel. A woman who built a career on glamour, power, and a ruthless streak the few dared to cross.
Really? Did she like it? Oh, really? Did she like it?
Joan Crawford.
Number 4. Joan Crawford. If Lupe Velez was a hurricane, Joan Crawford was a glacier, dazzling, unmovable, and capable of crushing anyone who stood in her way. Born Lucille Liz Swore, Crawford reinvented herself with a name as sharp as her cheekbones. She rose from a struggling dancer to one of MGM's brightest stars of the 1930s and 40s, but she didn't climb that ladder without a fight. Joan was relentless, ambitious to the point of obsession, and brattishness was her armor. On set, Crawford was known for her meticulous control. Every costume, every angle, every bead of sweat was considered. She would demand retakes if the lighting didn't flatter her, and woe to the cameraman who failed to catch her good side. She carried herself as Hollywood royalty and expected everyone else to agree. Crew members whispered about her icy demeanor, and co-stars sometimes found themselves frozen out if Joan suspected they might outshine her. Of course, no mention of Joan Crawford comes without the legendary feud with Bette Davis. Their rivalry on Whatever Happened to Baby Jane turned the set into a battlefield. Davis accused Crawford of sabotaging scenes, while Crawford allegedly slipped weights into her pockets during fight sequences, so Bette would struggle to drag her across the floor. For audiences, it was drama on screen. For the cast and crew, it was war. Crawford's bratty streak extended into her personal life as well. Stories of her lavish lifestyle, endless demands, and icy control over her image filled gossip columns. Even in motherhood, she was rumored to be as demanding as any studio executive, allegations that would later erupt into scandal with her daughter Christina's memoir, Mommy Dearest. But for all her flaws, Joan Crawford never faded quietly into the background. She fought, she clawed, and she refused to give up her crown, long after the studios moved on to younger stars. And if Crawford's brand of brattishness was cold and commanding, our next actress embodied something entirely different, a platinum blonde rebel whose playful mischief made her Hollywood's first real bad girl, Jean Harlow. Number 5. Jean Harlow. If Joan Crawford was polished marble, Jean Harlow was champagne, sparkling, intoxicated, and prone to spilling over. Crowned Hollywood's first blonde bombshell, Harlow wasn't just a screen siren of the 1930s, she was a cultural earthquake. With her platinum hair, flirtatious grin, and sly humor, she defied a new kind of stardom. But with all that charm came a streak of mischief that made her one of old Hollywood's most notorious brats. Films like Red-Headed Women and Dinner at 8 scandalized censors and thrilled audiences. Off-screen, Harlow carried that same playful defiance. She was known for cracking risque jokes on set, teasing co-stars, and ignoring the stiff etiquette that studios tried to enforce. Directors often complained she was late, unprepared, or too busy laughing with the crew to take rehearsal seriously. Yet, when the camera rolled, she lit up the screen in a way no one else could. Even MGM executives admitted her antics were tolerated because she brought box office gold. Harlow's personal life was equally brash. She shocked polite society by wearing revealing gowns, speaking her mind with biting wit, and openly flaunting Hollywood rules. For ladies, she once quipped that men were like linoleum. If you lay them right the first time, you could walk all over them for years. It's this mix of humor and audacity that made her unforgettable. But Jean's life was tragically brief, got short at only 26. Still, in her short time, she embodied a bratty boldness that broke barriers for every blonde starlet who followed. And if Harlow's mischief sparkled like champagne, the next actress was more like strong brandy, fiery, brash, and never one to hold back a slap, a laugh, or a scandal. Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Number 6. Zsa Zsa Gabor. If Jean Harlow was playful mischief, Zsa Zsa Gabor was unapologetic excess. Born in Hungary and sweeping into Hollywood like a jeweled hurricane, Zsa Zsa was less interested in acting than she was in living the role of a diva, and she played it to perfection. On screen, she appeared in films like Moulin Rouge and Lily, but her real fame came from being Zsa Zsa. With her diamonds, her lilting accent, and her famous greeting, "Darling!" She was a walking caricature of glamour. But behind the furs and jewels was a woman with a bratty streak that made headlines for decades. Her love life alone could fill a library. Married 9 times, she once quipped, "I am a marvelous housekeeper. Every time I leave a man, I keep his house." That sharp wit charmed audiences, but it also exposed her reputation for being high maintenance. Husbands, lovers, and even friends often found themselves dismissed if they didn't meet her standards. Then there was her infamous temper. Zsa Zsa didn't just curse out people who crossed her. She once slapped a Beverly Hills police officer during a traffic stop, an incident that landed her in court and on the front page of newspapers around the world. Instead of shame, Zsa Zsa treated it like a publicity stunt, arriving at hearings in full glamour and joking with reporters. She could be difficult on set, often demanding special treatment, but she also knew how to work the press better than almost anyone. For Zsa Zsa, brattiness wasn't a flaw, it was her brand. And if Zsa Zsa turned bratty behavior into comedy, our next actress showed how it could turn tragic. A rising star whose antics derailed her career almost as quickly as it began, the troubled but unforgettable Peggy Shannon. Number 7. Peggy Shannon. Hollywood has never been kind to replacements, and Peggy Shannon learned that lesson in the harshest way possible. When Clara Bow, the original It Girl, began to falter under the pressure of fame, Paramount Pictures thrust Peggy into her place, hoping lightning would strike twice. At first, it seemed promising. Shannon had beauty, charm, and a flicker of Bow's vivacious energy. But behind the screen, she was already slipping into habits that would ruin her. Peggy quickly developed a reputation for being unreliable. Directors complained she arrived late, forgot lines, or it didn't show up at all. Gossip columnists whispered about her drinking and her increasingly erratic behavior. In a business that demanded discipline beneath the glitter, her lack of control branded her as difficult, a brat whose antics outweighed her talent. Her personal life mirrored the chaos. Friends tried to intervene, but Peggy's defiance only grew stronger. Rather than repairing her reputation, she leaned into the lifestyle, choosing parties over professionalism. By the early 1930s, the shine was gone, and the studios moved on. Her decline was swift and devastating. Once touted as the new Clara Bow, Peggy ended a precautionary tale of squandered promise. By the time of her untimely death, at just 34, her name was remembered less for her roles than for the storms she left behind. Peggy Shannon proved that bratty behavior could make headlines, but it rarely made legends. And yet, sometimes a star could embody both, the chaos of a brat and the brilliance of a legend. Our next actress was the original It Girl herself, the woman Peggy could never replace. Clara Bow.
Number 8. Clara Bow. Before Hollywood had blonde bombshells or scandal queens, it had Clara Bow, the original It Girl. With her bobbed hair, wide eyes, and uncontainable energy, Bow didn't just act in the 1920s, she embodied the jazz age itself. Audiences adored her because she felt real, fun, daring, and just a little bit wicked. But that same spirit that made her a star also made her one of the most notorious brats of her time. Clara loathed rules. On set, she spoke bluntly to directors, improvised lines, and laughed off studio etiquette. She once said she wasn't acting at all. She was simply being herself. That authenticity made her magnetic, but it also terrified studio executives who wanted polished, obedient starlets. Gossip writers nicknamed her the Brooklyn Bonfire, and she lived up to it with a string of off-screen scandals. She drank, she swore, she gambled. Unlike many actresses who hid their indiscretions, Clara seemed to flaunt hers. Men adored her, women envied her, and the press couldn't get enough of the chaos she stirred. But for all the headlines, she delivered performances that still feel alive today, bubbling with humor, sensuality, and daring that no other actress could touch. Still, Clara's bratty defiance came at a price. The constant pressure, the endless gossip, and the vicious whispers of rivals wore her down. By the early 1930s, her career began to fade, leaving behind a mix of triumph and tragedy. Yet, even in her decline, Clara Bow remained unforgettable, a star who burned too brightly to ever be tamed. And if Clara was the it girl who set Hollywood aflame, our next actress brought a colder, calculated fire.
No, no, I did not.
You did meet her?
No.
If Clara Bow was chaos wrapped in charm, Marlene Dietrich was control wrapped in silk and smoke. With her sultry voice, androgynous style, and piercing gaze, Dietrich wasn't just a star, she was a living work of art. But behind the feathers and tuxedos was a woman who refused to bow to anyone, not studios, not directors, not even audiences. Dietrich was a perfectionist to the bone. Every costume, every shadow of light across her face was carefully orchestrated. Cinematographer Lee Garms once said that she practically co-directed her films, demanding specific lighting angles to sculpt her cheekbones. Directors both admired and dreaded her. She could elevate a scene into something unforgettable, or stall production entirely if she felt her standards weren't met. Her bratty streak wasn't loud tantrums, it was ice-cold authority. On set, she was calm, precise, and utterly immovable. She was famous for dressing in men's clothing at a time when Hollywood still clutched its pearls, delighting in the scandal she caused. In 1930, she shocked audiences in Morocco by planting a bold kiss on another woman, a scene that became iconic and one she defended fiercely against censorship. Off-screen, Dietrich's personal life only added to her legend. She had affairs with men and women, collected lovers like trophies, and flaunted her independence in a way that scandalized Hollywood but thrilled the public. When told she was difficult, she simply replied, "Darling, I am not difficult. I am exacting, and there is a great difference." For Dietrich, bratty behavior wasn't recklessness, it was power. She shaped her career on her own terms, and Hollywood never forgot it. And if Dietrich's ice could freeze a room, the next woman melted it with sheer audacity, a bouty brazen star who turned sass into stardom.
I had a shoe to lie on once. Really? Was he?
Number 10. Mae West. When it comes to brattiness wrapped in glitter and pearls, no one outshone Mae West. She wasn't just an actress, she was a phenomenon, a walking scandal in sequins who never once apologized for being herself. With her husky voice, hourglass figure, and one-liners sharp enough to make censors faint, West built a career on sass and spectacle. She didn't rise to fame through the Hollywood machine, but bulldozed her way in from Broadway. Her early plays were so scandalous, landed her in jail for corrupting the morals of youth. Instead of shame, Mae turned We Arrest into publicity, quipping, "I believe in censorship. I made a fortune out of it." That single line captures the essence of Mae West, bratty, bold, and always in control of her narrative. On screen, she was just as unruly. She wrote many of her own scripts, lacing them with innuendo that tested and often broke Hollywood's strict morality code, scandalized the press but thrilled audiences. Directors struggled to keep her on schedule, since Mae preferred to set the pace herself. Her bratty streak extended into her personal life too. She surrounded herself with young, muscular companions, draped herself in diamonds, and lived in a mansion. For Mae, being a diva wasn't bad behavior. It was good business. Even late in her career, when studios tried to push her aside, Mae staged her comebacks with a wink, proving she would leave Hollywood only on her terms.
If Dietrich played the icy queen, Mae West was Hollywood's empress, bold, brash, and unforgettable. But while Mae reveled in her power, our next star wielded hers with a fiery bluntness that left lovers, rivals, and directors alike reeling. Number 11. Ava Gardner. If Mae West purred her defiance, Ava Gardner roared hers. With smoldering beauty and a fiery temper to match, Ava became one of the great scream sirens of the 1940s and 50s. But behind the sultry eyes and velvet gowns was a woman who lived life recklessly, spoke her mind without hesitation, and left a trail of lovers and gossip that cemented her as one of Hollywood's most untamable brats. Discovered in true Hollywood fashion, spotted in a photograph at a shop window, Ava was signed by MGM, who envisioned her as another polished glamour girl. But Ava had little patience for polish. She cursed freely, drank heavily, and made it clear she had no interest in playing the studio's obedient puppet. Her love life was legendary. She married Mickey Rooney and swiftly divorced him. Her second marriage to Artie Shaw crumbled under his arrogance. And then came Frank Sinatra. Their affair, scandalous, passionate, and often violent, kept the tabloids in business for years. Ava herself admitted he was good in the feathers, but lousy to live with. It was the kind of blunt, unladylike remark that made her both adored and condemned. On set, she could be temperamental, often clashing with directors or refusing to play roles she found beneath her. But yet when she did perform, she delivered magnetic turns in films like The Killers, Magambo, and The Barefoot Contessa. Critics called her tempestuous, studios called her difficult, but audiences couldn't look away. Gardner herself never denied her brattiness, she reveled in it, once saying, "I've always loved the idea of not being what people expect me to be." And that was Ava, unpredictable, uncontainable, and utterly unforgettable. If Ava Gardner's wildness burned like fire, the next actress embodied a different kind of storm, a violent-eyed beauty whose bratty streak included tantrums, indulgence, and a string of marriages that made headlines across the globe. Elizabeth Taylor.
Number 12. Elizabeth Taylor. If Hollywood ever produced a true queen of excess, it was Elizabeth Taylor. With her violet eyes, dazzling diamonds, and a personal life that outshone most of her films, Taylor embodied both the glamour and the chaos of stardom. She was adored as one of the greatest screen beauties of all time, yet she was equally notorious for her tantrums, indulgences, and unapologetic appetite for love and luxury. Taylor began her career as a child actress, but by the time she was a young woman, she had already developed a reputation for being demanding. She hated playing second fiddle, fought with directors who tried to control her, and insisted on being treated like the star she knew she was. Studios found her exasperating, but they also couldn't deny her power at the box office. Her bratty streak shone brightest in her personal life. Elizabeth married not once, not twice, but 8 times, and every romance seemed bigger, louder, and more dramatic than the last. Her scandalous affair with Richard Burton while she was still married to Eddie Fisher shocked Hollywood and the Vatican alike. But Taylor never apologized. Instead, she flaunted her love affairs, her jewels, and her lifestyle with a brazenness that turned her into a legend. On set, she was infamous for her lateness and demands. During the filming of Cleopatra, she arrived hours late, threw lavish parties while the studio bled money, and insisted on costumes dripping in gold. The production nearly bankrupted 20th Century Fox, but Taylor walked away with a record-breaking $1 million salary and the title of Hollywood's most expensive diva. Yet for all the tantrums and scandals, audiences adored her. Perhaps it's because she lived exactly as she pleased, daring the world to keep up. And if Elizabeth Taylor reigned as a glamorous empress of indulgence, our next star was her chaotic mirror, a fragile yet unpredictable figure whose bratty antics often clashed with her iconic image. Before we dive into our final 3 Bratty legends, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss more untold Hollywood stories.
Scotch, I guess, and nice.
Number 13. Marilyn Monroe. Few stars embodied Hollywood's contradictions like Marilyn Monroe. To the public, she was the ultimate blonde bombshell. Breathy voice, dazzling smile, curves that launched 1,000 headlines. But behind that image was a woman often labeled difficult, whose bratty streak came not from arrogance alone, but from deep insecurity, rebellion, and a refusal to be treated as disposable. Marilyn started in the 1940s as a studio model, quickly rising to yet while crediences adored her, studio executives found her exasperating. She was chronically late to set, sometimes by hours, leaving co-stars fuming and productions stalled. Directors complained that she forgot lines, refused rehearsals, and demanded endless retakes. But when the camera finally rolled, she delivered magic. Her so-called tantrums often came from frustration. Marilyn was pigeonholed as the dumb blonde, a role she hated. She wanted serious acting opportunities, even studying with Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio. Would Fox try to force her into lightweight comedies, she rebelled, refusing to work until the studio raised her salary and granted her more control. It was a bratty move in the eyes of executives, but it also made her one of the first actresses to wrestle power from the studio system. Her personal life only added to her reputation. 3 marriages, to Jody Maggio, Arthur Miller, and James Doherty, ended in heartbreak, each played out under relentless public scrutiny. She surrounded herself with admirers, but often pushed people away with erratic behavior, heavy drinking, and mood swings. Still, her vulnerability made her bratty defiance all the more captivating. Moreau once quipped, "I'm selfish, impatient, and a little insecure. I make mistakes. I am out of control and at times hard to handle. But if you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best." Marilyn's bratty antics may have frustrated her peers, but they also reveal a woman fighting desperately to be seen beyond the image. Number 14. Judy Garland. Few stars shone brighter or burned more chaotically than Judy Garland. To the world, she was the wide-eyed Dorothy, the girl who sang Over the Rainbow. But behind the studio-crafted innocence was a volatile, fragile woman whose bratty reputation grew out of exhaustion, resentment, and sheer rebellion against the relentless machine that built her. From the time she was a teenager, MGM controlled every aspect of her life. Her weight, her schedule, even her sleep. Studio bosses fed her pills to keep her awake for shoots, and sleeping pills to knock her out. By her 20s, Judy was already battling dependency, mood swings, and a fiery temper. On set, her behavior was infamous. She arrived late, sometimes hours behind schedule. She walked off productions mid-shoot, forcing entire crews to win. During Annie Get Your Gun, her erratic absences led to her being replaced, a humiliation that only fueled her resentment. Directors dreaded her unpredictability, but when Judy delivered, she was magical. Few could command the screen with her blend of vulnerability and raw emotion. Her personal life mirrored her professional chaos. Married 5 times, Judy's romances were as stormy as her career. She could be charming one moment, then a mist the next. Sweet Dorothy one day, a storm cloud the next. Friends and colleagues often described her as impossible, but also unforgettable. Garland's bratty antics weren't always willful. They came from a woman pushed beyond her limits, rebelling against a system that treated her like a product. And that rebellion, while costly, only deepened her legend. If Judy Garland was the tragic brat battling demons behind the rainbow, then our final star is the icy brat. Serene on the surface, but chilly, calculating, and impossible to please. Grace Kelly.
Number 15. Grace Kelly. To the public, Grace Kelly was Hollywood perfection, the elegant blonde who glided through Hitchcock films and then ascended into royalty as Princess of Monaco. But behind the serene smile and refined poise was a woman whose bratty side emerged in aloofness, arrogance, and an ice-cold refusal to play the games of others. Grace's Hollywood career was brief but explosive. Films like Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, and High Society showcased her as the epitome of class. Yet off-screen, colleagues often described her as distant, detached, and impossible to warm up to. Unlike stars who courted gossip, Grace held herself above it all, which some admired as dignity, but others found unbearably bratty. Her aloofness extended to her romances. Though she later married Prince Rainier III, Grace had already earned a reputation in Hollywood for her affairs with co-stars, including Clark Gable and Ray Milland. She carried herself with an entitlement that suggested the rules never applied to her. When she left Hollywood at the height of her fame to become a princess, it cemented her icy image. She abandoned the industry without a backward glance, leaving fans stunned and studios fuming. As Princess Grace, she cultivated an even colder persona, glamorous, untouchable, and regal to the point of frostbite. Her brattiness wasn't loud like Zsa Zsa's or fiery like Lupe's. It was quiet, calculated, and no less biting. Grace didn't need tantrums. Her silence and distance did the work for her. Closing our list with Grace Kelly feels almost poetic. She was the ultimate Hollywood brat in disguise, a woman who looked like perfection, but often treated those around her as though they were far beneath her. Now here's a question for you. Out of all the stars we've covered so far, which one do you think took Brattiness to the highest level? Was it a diva with sharp comebacks or a wild starlet with fiery tantrums? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. From the sharp wit of Bette Davis to the icy poise of Grace Kelly, these actresses prove that Hollywood's golden age was never as polished as the silver screen made it seem. Brattiness wasn't a flaw for them. It was power, survival, and at times, pure entertainment. Some of their antics are in admiration, others scandal, but together they rewrote the rules of stardom. Their legacy is more than the films they left behind. It's the unforgettable drama, fire, and flair that still fascinates us today. After all, old Hollywood's brats were also its brightest stars.